Okay, y'all, we got some controversy. We got some controversy to talk about. Let's dive into it head first. So this is in The Intercept. They say, Twitter censored professor's post for abusive behavior toward the Queen. Now, I just want to remind everybody, this is after the Queen died. They say the policy was invoked to protect the world's longest reigning monarch, who died that day, from being silenced. So that's the policy that Twitter cited for this act of censorship is, you're being abusive, and we don't want you to silence the victim of your abuse. Okay, well, the victim's dead, so what exactly is going on here? I'm going to give you the specifics. Let's dive into the article. A Twitter spokesperson said the social media giant deleted a Carnegie Mellon University professor's controversial tweet condemning Queen Elizabeth II on the grounds that it was, quote, abusive. The company defines abusive behavior as an attempt to harass, intimidate, or silence someone else's voice. In this case, the voice of the world's longest reigning monarch. It was a banner day for posting. As soon as news of the Queen's impending death hit Twitter, the platform was quickly dominated by a global outpouring of both grief and glee. A heated mixture of paeans to the Queen's 70-year tenure and angry denunciations of the British monarchy's legacy of colonial violence and exploitation. Among the latter was Carnegie Mellon's Uju Anya, an associate professor of second language acquisition. Quote, I heard the chief monarch of a thieving, raping, genocidal empire is finally dying. May her pain be excruciating, Anya tweeted. So that's the thing. That's the tweet right there that led to all the controversy, and we're going to get to why it blew up in a second, because it may have just remained in a little corner of Twitter, if not for a little guy by the name of Jeff Bezos. Quote, we took enforcement action on the account you referenced for violating the Twitter rules on abusive behavior. Twitter spokesperson Lauren Myers Kavanaugh, using the British spelling of behavior, wrote to The Intercept in response to a query. The removal of the post illustrates how criticisms of powerful people, however distasteful, can be disappeared from social media sites for murky reasons. Quote, it does highlight the power imbalances that can often exist in the way these platforms treat powerful figures. Evelyn Duick, an assistant professor at Stanford Law School and scholar of content moderation policies, told The Intercept. I love that title. Scholar of content moderation policies. That seems incredibly made up, to say the least. Quote, often people in power get allowances because it's in the public interest, but people don't for criticizing them, even though that's often clearly in the public interest too. See, here's an interesting point here, right? They're saying oftentimes people in power will get away with saying things that might violate the terms of service. Why? Because they are powerful. And so it's sort of overlooked. But people who are not powerful, who are criticizing the powerful, they're the ones who bear the brunt of the terms of service, and oftentimes there's a loose interpretations, and perhaps they're cracking down when they shouldn't be. Anya's tweet immediately attracted widespread attention and criticism, not least because it was reproachfully quote-tweeted by Amazon founder Jeff Bezos. This is someone supposedly working to make the world better? The second richest American tweeted. I don't think so. Hey, Jeff, instead of perusing Twitter to dunk on professors, how about you pay your fucking workers more? Dippy. How about that? God, just imagine having the wealth and power of Jeff Bezos, and you're looking for things to get triggered by on Twitter so you can whine like a snowflake to the mods. Where was I? Twitter users were quick to point out that Anya had recently tweeted approvingly of Chris Smalls, a rising labor leader instrumental in efforts to unionize Amazon warehouses. So you see what they're doing here? They're saying it's guilt by association stuff. She said this terrible thing, which is really impolite and really immoral and unethical. And she also likes Chris Smalls, who by extension now is immoral and unethical and maybe doing things that are bad and wrong that he shouldn't be doing. So this is an unholy alliance of all of these ghouls. And it went from attacking an impolite tweet over the Queen's death to, hey, isn't labor organizing bad? Isn't that terrible? Look, she likes this guy, Chris Smalls. Maybe he's super questionable, huh? After the criticisms came pouring in, Anya, who was born in Nigeria, tweeted in defense of her remarks, quote, if anyone expects me to express anything but disdain for the monarch who supervised a government that sponsored the genocide that massacred and displaced half my family, and the consequences of which those alive today are still trying to overcome, You can keep wishing upon a star. Anya did not immediately respond to the Intercept's request for comment. See, so look, I mean, it's an interesting point, right? Now, the thing that she said about the Queen, would I have said that about the Queen? No. I'm saving stuff like that for when Henry Kissinger dies. No, I'm kidding. I'm saving stuff like that for when Dick Cheney or George W. Bush dies. No, I'm kidding. Maybe. Anyway, that's not something I would necessarily say about the Queen. Not that I like the Queen or that I dislike the Queen. But it is a fact she was the figurehead of a government that was genocidal, imperialistic, and colonialist. And again, that's not an opinion. I know it sounds like I'm using a bunch of lefty buzzwords there, but those are facts. That actually is the case. That actually is what she is and what she represents. So when pushed a little bit and when getting backlash, she comes out and says, basically, they genocided and massacred and displaced half my family. So does she have license to be upset? Does she have license to not celebrate in the death of the Queen? Yeah, she has license to be like, sort of fuck her, right? And again, was there a direct call for violence in the tweet? No. I mean, you could say it's distasteful because she's saying, I wish you excruciating pain upon your death, which is like, don't really wish anybody excruciating pain upon their death. That's generally my view, although I can't say I'll be too kind again when Dick Cheney and George W. Bush and those types die. So I get how you could argue it's distasteful, but it's not, there is no direct call for violence. I don't see how that's quote unquote abusive because the Queen is dead. So basically what you're saying is you can't besmirch high profile people who die. Even if you really dislike them, even if it's tied to a substantive thing like genocide or displacement or whatever, you're not allowed to say things that are this distasteful. That's basically the argument. I think that's where Twitter is coming from. While the tweet was no doubt offensive to many fans of the Crown in wishing suffering upon Elizabeth, the specific rule cited by Myers-Kavanaugh justifying the censorship isn't typically deployed in defense of royalty. The company claims that its ban on abusive remarks is designed to protect speech rather than delete it. Quote, in order to facilitate healthy dialogue on the platform and empower individuals to express diverse opinions and beliefs, we prohibit behavior that harasses or intimidates or is otherwise intended to shame or degrade others, Twitter's online help center says. We consider abusive behavior an attempt to harass, intimidate, or silence someone else's voice. So in other words, the argument they're making here is, look, our terms of service is there to protect the vulnerable. That's what we're doing. But the way they deployed it here is to protect the powerful. Protect the powerful and attack a professor. Quote, in order to facilitate healthy dialogue on the platform and empower individuals to express diverse opinions and beliefs, we prohibit behavior that harasses or intimidates or is otherwise intended to shame or degrade others. I think we already read this part, right? Yeah, I think we did. Such speech is deleted to shield vulnerable voices from suppression. Quote, on Twitter, you should feel safe to express your unique point of view. The policy reads, we believe in freedom of expression and open dialogue, but that means little as an underlying philosophy if voices are silenced because people are afraid to speak up. So, I mean, look, this is one of those classic examples, right? Of, I don't agree with what you say, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it. Do I think the tweet was distasteful? Sure. But it's also kind of well-founded given her family history, right? And given any objective reading of the British Empire, right? So, my guess is you are not going to see the right-wing free speech absolutist brigade come to her defense. Why? Because this is an area where they disagree with her on the substance. And since they disagree with her on the substance, all of a sudden, all the concern about rights and freedoms and the ability to speak your mind, even if it hurts people's feelings, out the window. Gone. Gone. In fact, if anything, there will be a continued pile-on over what she said. So they will actively side with the censorship brigade. And this is yet another example, man. We've talked about it a million times. This notion that people have that, oh, social media only censors people on the right. This is not a right-winger. They censor people on the left all the time, too. All the prominent Antifa accounts were banned. Now, am I a defender of Antifa? Do I agree with their tactics? I don't. I agree with Noam Chomsky when he says Antifa is a gift to the right. I agree with that. But to ban all the accounts, that is censorship. That is deplatforming, quite literally. And that is something we should only reserve for the most extreme cases. Again, if you actually violate a law, that's a different question. If you do direct threats of violence or libel or slander or defamation, there should be an open process where we determine what happened there in a given case, and then you act. But it should only be in those instances. Direct threats of violence, libel, slander, doxing is another one. A form of impersonation where you're like making it look like somebody is committing a crime when they didn't commit a crime. You know what I'm saying? Like things like that, things that are actually crimes. If you just have an opinion that's you're coming across like an asshole to even 95% of the population, I don't care. That person should be allowed to speak. That person should be allowed to speak. And again, it's testing your principles. If you believe in freedom of speech, even when you massively disagree with it. So I would give credit. Any right-winger who comes out to defend this person, I give credit to. But I don't think they're going to do that. They never do that. Whenever there's censorship of somebody who's nominally on the left, it's fucking crickets. And if anything, they add to the pylon. We've seen it time and time again. Where were we? It's not clear how the Queen of England could ever be meaningfully silenced or afraid to speak up because of an academic's tweet. Twitter did not respond in time for publication when asked whether the abusive behavior policy applies to the deceased. The policy lays out a variety of abusive speech types, including violent threats. Again, I'm for being banned over that. Direct threats of violence are not okay. Content that wishes, hopes, promotes, incites, or expresses a desire for death, serious bodily harm, or serious disease, and unwanted sexual advances. It's unclear which of these categories Anya's tweet, published when its subjects were on the verge of death and most likely not checking Twitter, could fall under. The examples of abusive behavior that Twitter provides are of the more clear-cut, I hope you get cancer and die variety, rather than an edge case hoping that somebody already near death will experience great suffering. The policy does note that in some cases offending tweets will be deleted while sparing the account from suspension, as was the case with Anya. So aren't they being so kind? We're just going to delete your tweet, but not suspend you, not give you a timeout. When regarding certain individuals' credibility accused of severe violence, an enforcement that would seem to implicitly agree with the professor's underlying argument against the Crown. Doak, the Stanford professor, said that it seemed like an odd enforcement of the rule, given the vast gulf in power between a professor and a monarch. Unclear to me how the Queen is going to be intimidated by that tweet, she told The Intercept. Surprised they stood by it, actually. So I will take issue with this last line here. This idea that, like, hey, there's a big gulf in power, so that's why, you should have let her say what she's going to say. No, you should let her say what she's going to say as a matter of principle because we side with free expression. I don't care about the power imbalance at all. Either you crossed the line or you didn't cross the line. I wouldn't have two separate lines, one for people in power, one for people out of power. Justice should be blind, right? So I don't agree with the whole power imbalance argument. But I definitely wouldn't have deleted the tweet. And I'm sure there were, as many goofy ass tweets there were sucking off the Queen. Andrew Sullivan, like, I'm trying to write and I'm crying. This is the death of the bastion of the last hopes of freedom, modern society. I'm paraphrasing, but, said something to that effect. As many goofy tweets as there were like that, there were other ones that were, celebrating effectively. Now, again, you guys know me. My style is not really to celebrate when almost anybody dies, right? And I get how normies look at that and they're like, ugh, I don't want to be associated with these people. That's gross. But that's not the conversation we're having here. We're not having the optical conversation of does that look good or bad? Because I would agree, it looks bad, right? We're having the conversation of, as a matter of principle, what should Twitter do? And what Twitter did here is bullshit. And the final point I want to leave you guys with is this right here. I think this is a great point from Adam Johnson. So he's responding to this story, which says, Twitter censored a tweet wishing the Queen Elizabeth would suffer on her deathbed because it might harass, intimidate, or silence her. So Adam Johnson says, does anyone really think a tweet praising the death of an official enemy state official would be deleted by Twitter corporate? That's a great point. This shit is so insulting to everyone's intelligence. Anglo-American pundits pen op-eds about how we need to bomb Iran or invade Venezuela twice a month. That is absolutely true. So in other words, direct calls for state violence against, like, relatively powerless countries compared to the U.S., Iran and Venezuela. They're like, oh, all systems go. All systems go. You can beg for bloodshed and murder and invasion and displacement and killing. And they do it in high-minded, like The Economist or Foreign Policy Magazine, right? Well, they don't do it in The Economist. They're probably talking about the economy in The Economist, but you get the point. They're doing it in these, like, highbrow publications. And you could call for violence. You could call for invasion. And nobody cares. They let you get away. They let you do it. They'll let you post the article. They won't even, tweak the algorithm to push it down. No, it'll be able to spread far and wide however you want, right? So that doesn't violate any Twitter policies, but saying mean things about a dead queen does. And then the other point is just, it's absolutely devastating. So when the Ayatollah in Iran passes away, and there's going to be an explosion in many circles of celebration, is Twitter going to delete all the things that celebrate the death of the Ayatollah? Is Twitter going to delete even the exact same kind of tweet, word for word, about how I hope it was an excruciating death? I hope that the Ayatollah was suffering greatly. Are they going to delete that? Are they going to delete the tweets when Kim Jong-un dies? Are they going to delete the tweets saying, oh my God, they wanted Kim Jong-un to experience an excruciating death? How impolite. That crosses a line. That's abusive behavior. They're not going to do that. See, this is the problem. You create all these different standards. And it is fundamentally to protect the powerful and to crack down on the powerless, expressing the opinions that are outside the Overton window and the spectrum of respectability politics. Well, fuck your respectability politics. I don't care about them. Nobody should. Your lines are arbitrary. And these people are incredibly biased. Again, free expression should be the guiding star here. It should. Anything that crosses a line, yeah, we could take action, but it's got to be a direct threat of violence. It's got to be libel, slander, defamation, doxing. It's got to really cross that line, and there should be a process whereby you can show and prove, like, hey, here's how this crossed the line and why this crossed the line, and that's why we're acting. This kind of petty censorship is literally just to protect the fifis of these powerful ghouls who also want to try to downplay the real impact of the former British Empire. Because any objective discussion about the British Empire is not going to go favorably for the British Empire. It's going to be, yeah, you were brutal, just like every other fucking empire. Shock, right? So, anyway, there you have it. Undelete the tweet. And let's start getting more serious here about deplatforming and censorship. They really need to reel it in. They've gone way too far, and that's been the case for a while. Ever since Adpocalypse, when YouTube defunded all independent news and politics overnight, we haven't trusted them. We know they can pull the rug out from underneath us at any time. If you enjoy this content, please consider tipping $1 or $2 per month on the Secular Talk Patreon. Link in the video description box below. Thanks for your support.